Present.
Councilmember Ross.
Present.
Councilmember Tapia.
Present.
Councilmember Littleworth.
Present.
Councilmember Stone.
Here.
Councilmember Bloomberg.
Here.
Mayor Ryan.
Here, we have a quorum. Councilmember Tapia, what's the best soccer team in all the world?
Wait, say it again. What's the best one?
Soccer team. Or should I say football?
Not hearing.
What did he say?
Can't hear you.
Uh-oh. How do you want to do
That's
it?
why we do this, so try again, to see if the mics are working properly.
Okay.
We need to just
I
establish
can
if you
hear
could.
you really well.
Oh,
I cannot hear.
You can hear me very
The
well.
mayor asked what's the best soccer team in the world.
Well, I want to say Peru, but I like the Wisconsin team.
The purpose is to identify if this is indeed.
That sounds clearly like Councilmember Tapia, so we're in good shape. Great, thank you for joining us from your vacation, we appreciate it. Our first item is approval of the minutes for the July 29th, 2024 regular meeting and July 29th, 2024 closed session. May I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those minutes are
Voting present on both of those.
great, thank you. Okay. The first item we're talking about tonight is city-sponsored events in downtown Highland Park. And Ida.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. So I'd like to introduce our communications manager, Amanda Bennett, and our business development manager, Carolyn Hirsch. They are going to be walking through a PowerPoint presentation that we have prepared this evening. This presentation mirrors the comprehensive staff report that is included in the packet. There are 3 policy questions that we are looking for council feedback on this evening as it pertains to this matter. Briefly, just want to remind the council that in terms of special events, the city processes over 100 special events each year. Many of those are private property events that take place throughout the community. Most of the events actually take place within the downtown district. So whether it's actually in Port Clinton or it could be a 5K half marathon race throughout all the city streets, but we have a special event permit that we use to process those. The city also coordinates a number of events in the downtown district and then specifically in Port Clinton as well as the lot. And so we're going to be focusing on those 2 properties this evening. Very briefly, in the year 2021, we undertook a comprehensive evaluation of evaluating the different types of events that the city coordinates. And we held focus groups, we got feedback from businesses, from property owners, and all that led to an evaluation and an interest by the majority of council members to increase the number of entertainment venues that we coordinate as a city. And so we looked at the best location to do that, evaluated those thoroughly, and we came up with what is now commonly known as the lot, which everyone is familiar with. So one of the first policy questions is, do we want to continue having events in the magnitude that we are currently having them today? Our intent is not to go through the past evaluation and the past committee of the whole presentation that also was comprehensive, but really kind of ask you these policy questions and look towards 2025 as well as the future. But we're happy to answer any questions you have. And for public purposes, those detailed staff reports that talk about the history and what got us to this day are certainly available on the city's website. So with that, I will turn it over to our professionals to lead us in the PowerPoint.
And I'll ask that we let the presentation flow through to the end. And I'll just share with those who've joined us, thanks for coming. We generally don't have input from the public during these committee of the whole policy conversations. It's just a chance for the council to dialogue and kind of ask the staff questions before we move forward with anything. But we appreciate you being here and your interest in the subject matter. Take it away.
Thank you. And I would also like to just recognize our colleague Diane Larson, who is the city's marketing coordinator. Could not join us this evening, but was hugely instrumental in preparing the staff report and the presentation. So as Nita said, we have 3 primary policy questions for council today. Leading off with, should the city continue to produce medium or large scale events, and what is the purpose and target audience? But before we get to that question, what we wanted to show you was an overview of what is currently being planned for the 2025 event season. The plan that you see on screen is a hybrid approach. We have what we're calling bookend events, so 2 big events surrounding a weekly Port Clinton concert series that expands on the 5 shows that we did this year. So the goal is to take some of the feedback that we heard at the last committee of the whole meeting regarding long-term planning for the lot, and to augment the event schedule that we saw successfully happen this year with some of the most popular events from the lot. So you'll see we would propose beginning with the Taste of Highland Park. It's a 2-day event. It is the most popular, the signature event in the lot. So we would anticipate beginning with that in late June. We would then propose a 10-night Friday concert series from mid-July to late September, located at Port Clinton, kind of a smaller scale event in terms of attendees. We would avoid the sidewalk sale and the Port Clinton Art Festival, so we're not doing too much all at once. We could explore the possibility of doing another vintage car show, and we would propose concluding the season with Stews and Brews, which if you had a chance to go, that's typically our late October, early November event that has a good competition going now for the best stew and the best brew. So to our first question, should the city continue to produce medium or large scale events? And just before we go any further, we just want to define medium or large scale events. So for our purposes, we think of small as anything attracting 250 people or more. We think of medium as being in that 500 to 1500 range, and then large scale is 1500 plus. So as you can see from the previous slide, our Stews and Brews and our Taste of Highland Park fit squarely into that large scale event series, whereas our Port Clinton concert series, we're still looking at as a small scale event. Okay, so in line with that first question, we see the notion of whether or not we should continue hosting these events as having 2 important components that you see on the screen, the purpose and our target audience. We all need to be aligned on why we're doing these events as we consider our long-term plans both for 2025 and beyond. So what we have up here is two different purpose statements, right? So we want events to foster a sense of community, in which case our primary target audience are residents, because we want to get that neighborhood feeling of people together with more of a hyper-local focus. Or is our primary goal to facilitate economic development, in which case we need to look beyond Highland Park, because we know that our local business community cannot be sustained by local spending alone. So one way that you attract people to come to your community, raise awareness about what our business community has to offer, is by giving people an excuse to come here. And that might not directly translate into sales. We've said from the beginning that we can't draw a straight line between an event and a purchase. But it does put Highland Park on the map for people who live beyond the city. So we feel like this is an important question that the council needs to discuss, so we're all on the same page, because while these work hand in hand, the way that we plan these events and the way that we market them depends on what your overall purpose is. If that makes sense. Okay, which leads us to our next policy question.
Of should city events be held at the lot and or at Port Clinton Square? So there's a number of advantages and considerations of events at Port Clinton Square. The first being it is the classic heart of downtown. It's combined, if you combine it with closing Central Avenue, the view of the skyline along with the tree canopies and retail stores at night can be quite beautiful. However, it can only host small events like Friday night concerts or the holiday lighting when it's only Port Clinton. So Central would have to be closed for mid to large events because Port Clinton doesn't have the capacity for infrastructure and a crowd of over 450. Closing Central requires event traffic parking notices and a couple of weeks in advance. It requires coordinating deliveries with businesses, and because we have to bring all the infrastructure in, as opposed to having it all in place, we'd have to coordinate deliveries, vendor load-in, and entertainment arrivals. Port Clinton alone can host 400 to 475 in terms of a crowd, as we mentioned, and The road closure would probably be 2 days. If it's a 2-day event, it would probably be a 3-day road closure in order to set and stage the event infrastructure. The stage would have to be moved into the intersection to accommodate a larger stage. And this is all doable. We can do any of this. It's just a matter of logistics. And it may have to be, like I said, might have to be moved into the intersection because Central between First and Second has varying widths throughout. And so, for example, for the Port Clinton Art Festival, we've been able to get a stage in at Central at Second or at First. But that's because all the streets are closed in that vicinity. And sometimes what we've done in the past has put it on an angle to accommodate emergency vehicles. And to do that, we may have to close Second at south of Central. So again, it's doable. It's just a question of how we're going to do it. Let's see.
Can you just get me to the next slide?
Yeah.
Thank you. And then, as you know from our lengthy discussion surrounding Independence Day planning earlier this year, the city has received some mixed feedback regarding hosting events at Portland Square. So, I mean, anecdotally, it seems to me that we've heard from more residents who are comfortable with bringing large-scale events back to Port Clinton than not. But we've also heard emotionally and urgently from others who are concerned that the large-scale events and big crowds might be re-traumatizing or might be insensitive. So we want to raise this notion of trauma-informed considerations at Port Clinton for your awareness and discussion, because we think it is valuable for you to have that conversation publicly. There's some more detail in the staff report, but I do just want to note for everyone here that in keeping with guidance from the Department of Justice, Office of Victims of Crime, we have really taken a balanced approach to hosting events in this area since 2022. That means that we've been hosting smaller scale events at Port Clinton since fall of 2022 and have continued in that way with small events at Port Clinton and large events at the Y, just to be sensitive to those different needs in the community.
So the main advantage of the lot is it doesn't require a road closure or disrupt business operations. Some infrastructure can remain in place. It accommodates a fire lane alongside the lot, a large stage, it has power on site, but as it stands, it's asphalt and is not attractive. For comparison, Port Clinton combined with Central Avenue has the capacity for a mid to large event, but somewhat less than the lot.
Okay, but let's talk costs. So you've seen kind of where we stand in terms of capacity, but in terms of cost, this chart represents an apples-to-apples comparison of the cost to host our 2024 event series with these different parameters. So this is not for next year. This is if we were to take what we did this year at the lot and duplicate it in either Port Clinton with city-owned items or Port Clinton without city-owned items. This is where the cost breakdown would fall. So one thing to note just before we go on, we did remove approximately $10,000 and a little bit more in one-time costs for the lot this year that we would not expect to be needed again. So just that caveat is in there. So what's the same? Basically event management, marketing, signs. The only difference here is less money in signs moving forward because we can reuse existing signage that has the lot branding. Entertainment, stage and sound is going to be the same no matter where we do it. And security costs will be the same regardless of location. So what's different? The significant cost differences are due to the existing setup of the lot affords us with on-site storage during the event season. So that means that we don't have to pay costs to bring equipment in and out. If we were to use city-owned items at Port Clinton, we're not going to pay for the items, but we are going to pay for transport back and forth and storage at an off-site facility so that we have those items when we're needed and they're gone when we don't. And if we were to use all rental items, we would try to sell the items we've already purchased, so keep that in the back of your minds. But we would then need to pay for rental, setup, teardown, and transport fees. So this accounts for the differences that you're seeing in extra setup, strike maintenance fees, And using all rentals, of course, eliminates that off-season storage line. Oh, this is mine. That was it. 2024 budget. Here is a breakdown of kind of where we are to date in terms of spend. So you can kind of see where we based the projections off of. So we are currently anticipating a total spend of $435,000, offset by $49,000 in sponsorships for the lot. So we do appreciate all the sponsors who have given so generously to these events over the past few years. The Portland Concert Series, one thing just to note here, because those events don't really require much in terms of infrastructure or event maintenance, like people clearing tables, emptying trash cans and whatnot. The primary costs are just entertainment and security. So for 5 shows, that was a total of $14,650.
Okay, so in terms of attendance and accurate attendance, we went from hand-clicking, people coming and going, to purchasing Placer AI, which is a location intelligence platform software, and it counts foot traffic, visitor metrics, including unique visits, frequency of visits, and dwell time, and it counts all visitors who are 18 and over with a phone, and they're pinged, but the personal data is not maintained. And then they take into account that people come and go, and that families may be present, and there may be children without phones, and come up with an accurate count. So essentially, the mid to large events we hosted this year and last year would require a Central Avenue closure or held at the lot.
So lastly, one of the outcomes of our previous discussion was to think about what minimal infrastructure could look like. And so we brainstormed what that could look like at both Port Clinton and at the lot. So taking a look at Port Clinton first, we have some ideas. Oh, can you stick to the slide for me? Sorry. We have some ideas that are in the packet. Some easy upgrades, we think, would be creating a performance platform that would enhance the experience of the weekly concert series. So Port Clinton Square can't accommodate a stage of the type that you would need for the bands that we're bringing to, say, Taste of Highland Park. But for like the acoustic duos and smaller groups that we had for the Friday night series this year, a performance platform could definitely enhance that experience. We think we could also look into investing in some lighting upgrades at the square to make it brighter, make it more fun to be outside. I know everyone loves the multicolored lights in the trees. Maybe we could do more of that. More significant would be, just as a hypothetical thought here, a potential public-private partnership whereby, let's say, space was available within Port Clinton and there was interest from Port Clinton management, we could explore the feasibility of investing in creating permanent storage or bathrooms or think big. It's worth noting that during the 2021 Focus Group Series, we did have a number of requests for playgrounds, green spaces, and a splash pad. I'm sure I'm not surprising any of you who remember the fountain that a splash pad is not doable at Port Clinton Square, but neither is a green space or a playground.
So staff thought about what else could we do with the lot, and came up with an alternative idea if the city chooses to hold small events in Port Clinton and not close Central Avenue, which is disruptive to the community. They could consider a scaled back version of the lot, which would be considerably less than Lakota's proposal. The asphalt could be removed and replaced with grass. Shade structures and picnic tables or outdoor dining furniture could be installed, similar to what we have in Port Clinton. A permanent stage could be installed, or we could bring in a mobile stage. And we could bring an air-conditioned porta-lot trailer instead of the porta-potties, or installing a bathroom, and it would come in, would be delivered and removed after the event. And then it would also be essential to remove the bushes along St. John's because it creates a visual barrier and access barrier, and installing bollards for safety. Additional improvements could be made over time if desired. So staff is seeking the council's feedback on these 3 primary policy questions. The first is, should the city continue to produce medium to large scale events? What is the purpose and the target audience?
So let's take that one. Who would like to jump in on this? Amy?
I mean, I have a whole list, but I guess I'll just.
No, the question is, should we produce medium or large scale events, and what's the purpose and target audiences? The moment we're talking about that.
Since you kindly asked there, I believe that it isn't a goal to produce large-scale events. To me, the purpose of doing these events were the overall vitality and economic impact. I don't, if it's focused better, and you know I prefer Port Clinton Square, you know, if to me, the number of people, you know, standing in a given space isn't the ultimate measure of how successful it is. It's a combination of people and the money being spent in the central business district that would mark it as successful. I don't personally see the need for the goal to be large scale events. I think plenty of vitality, plenty of economic impact can happen if it's better located, and there'll be ripple effects, I think, beyond just what the immediate count is. If it's in a better location, people bringing people back, people telling people, there's just a ripple effect that, granted, is difficult to measure, but there could be ways to measure it in any event. I think it could far surpass even the numbers that we're seeing from the clickers.
So I just want to be clear, because I think one of the questions was, are we doing this for economic vitality, or are we doing this for community fun? But it sounds to me like you're saying we don't need large-scale events for economic vitality, and are you interested in just community gathering, or do you feel the smaller
I
events
think
meet that need?
I think that, I mean, it's hard to separate all this out, it's all interwoven, but I think a smaller number of people having a fabulous time is just fine, and I've said this before, that, you know, some of our events are in a lot are very, very poorly attended, some of them are well attended for the poor. I'd rather have a smaller space that's really well attended and looking, hopping, than a large space that looks desolate.
Okay, thank you. Kim?
I agree with you. I don't think event planning is a core responsibility of the city. We've spent over $400,000 this year alone on the lot, and I haven't seen data that shows a positive benefit on our businesses. But to your question about vitality, I agree that the smaller events, I think, serve that need. We should be focused on quality rather than quantity. If we want to incorporate more regular events like these weekly concerts at Port Clinton, maybe have street closures for a few of the larger events, or close a parking lot to do a car show, I'm fine with that. But I think interspersing these events and having them at different community spaces throughout downtown will activate it more for residents and visitors and enhance the experience of being in a park.
So for example, when, Amy, what was the name of your, is Amy still here? Yes, hi. What was the name of the thing that you had on Sheridan Road? It was like the craft festival versus the art festival?
Right, yeah, the art center.
Festival of Fun and Craft.
Festival of Fine Craft,
The
right.
art center.
So having different locations versus just concentrating on one place.
And we've got the library IGA on the agenda for the council meeting tonight, and that lodge to the east of the library is being contemplated to be used as a play space or passive recreation, so we have the potential for a playground there, which is also
Right.
in the vicinity of someone's in downtown.
Thank you. Marissa?
So I was gonna say, I think we should continue the medium and large scale. I mean, especially after this weekend at the art festival, and to see how well attended that was, and people loved it and loved the closure. And I love that it's bringing out people to the businesses, and I, talked to some businesses around this weekend, and they loved it and said that there was an increase in foot traffic, and the one complaint they had was parking, but they loved it. But then on the other side, I also look at it as, kind of spreading the wealth, if you will, and maybe having some other events at the lot, or the other side of Central where there's a lot of other businesses like Country Kitchen and Norton's, and somehow including them as well, and not just closure of Central. But I 100% think that medium and large scale events continue to bring in, families and people from all over, not just Highland Park, that love. I mean, I met a whole group of people from a different suburb, and they asked for recommendation for lunch from coming to the art festival, and that's great to hear. So that's
Yeah,
what
I talked to several restaurateurs during the weekend, and they were just ecstatic.
yes, yeah.
People were hot and hungry.
Yes.
Mayor, can I just put an add on? I loved the Portland Art Festival.
Great.
I think it's fabulous for Highland Park. I'm not excluding that. I want my answer to reflect that
Yeah.
that is phenomenal. I don't think that should be the main goal. I love that, but yeah. So that's my thank you.
Mayor, if I could just clarify, just for anyone in the public watching, so really we're just focused on the city events. I don't think there's anyone's interest in modifying or restricting private entities such as Amber Productions from coordinating their traditional art festival or, 5K runs or anything. So really we're just talking about, we have the concerts in Port Clinton that the city is coordinating. Those are really small events. The medium to large scale events that we're talking about are like the stews and brews and those large events we've been having at the lot.
Great, thank you. Annette?
Okay, so a couple of points. First of all, I'm very much in favor of not only continuing but
Of what?
doing large and medium-sized events. I like the idea of spreading it, much the way Bursa, council member, also stated it. But I think that it's really important to spread it between Port Clinton for smaller events. I think the Friday night things have been lovely. But frankly, the idea of 475 people in Port Clinton is like this. And when the art festival used to be set up differently, you could barely get through to see various booths. And the layout this year was spectacular because we could amble down the streets, but the kids were centered in one area. And I think the idea of closing Central is horrible. Once or twice, I understand, but it's cutting off the east side businesses, it's cutting off the central businesses. What we want to do is bring people in as much as possible. Anybody who comes in can get over, and by taking them over to the lot, you are also enabling them to go through the western portion of Central Avenue, meaning from Green Bay on over, which I think is very important. I do want to go back because there are newer council members here, and in 2021, the city conducted focus groups and asked every one of our entities, property owners, BDAG, everything, for their input, residents, community leaders, and this focus has gone on since 2021 into 2022. And we have spent $67,000 studying, and the reason we studied the lot and different iterations was because it was determined by so many members of this community that the number one thing they wanted to see was attracting new visitors to our city through community events, which is why, in answer to your question, Mayor, I support this for community events and beyond. And since that time, we added as a priority of the city economic development. And in that pillar, I don't see a better way to bring in more feet on the ground and more people. And I have never heard people as positive as at some of our large events, even at the Vintage Car Show, which did not have the kind of numbers that we saw at the Art Festival. but which was a total success at the sidewalk sale. People are like, God, I've never been here before. This is really a nice community. And they were walking up and down all our streets and they were going over to the lot. So while I do agree with Councilmember Ross that I don't want to see poor events at the lot, poorly attended or empty events, what I love about the idea of phasing in and grass is that I think we will retake the lot as a green space. I think we will slowly, and I have no problem saying this is contingent in terms of major infrastructure on getting grants, whether that's from the state or from wherever. But if we know that in Hubbard Woods and in Winnetka, 80% of it was funded, the infrastructure, through grants, that doesn't make it a 6 or 8 project. It makes it 80% paid by someone else, and it gives us a year-round area for people to sit rather than an asphalt parking lot. We have for the last 2 years not used, 57 parking spaces, and there has not been a problem. That tells us right away that that is underutilized space. So to me, to reclaim that as green, to add furniture so people could sit there all year round if they want to just be frozen and have a hot chocolate in the park, it is just a wonderful use. And then it also gives us a large area which does not require a lot of infrastructure in the beginning, and then depending on funding, maybe it's more. I'll also say I think that the responses really included bathrooms, and we are so fortunate in Port Clinton to have access to some as well as all the shops there. But in the small towns, and I am comparing this to out west, where the downtown is used as like a gathering, the bathrooms, which are beautiful new public bathrooms, are off to the side a bit. And I think that it's such a stark, underutilized, naked area at the lot right now, that to put in bathrooms there, or to use portalettes in the short term until we have funding, and to do big events with some grass and a couple of chairs, would really make the space, and shade. And I have to tell you, I don't know what happened to the idea of the pet thing, but a big pet event, but I saw
like
people.
the dog fair we did at Sunset?
Yeah, like a big pet event. And I have to tell you, by 4 o'clock on both Saturday and Sunday, people were carrying their pets because the asphalt was so hot. And I mean, at one point I saw this guy and he was struggling, and I was so glad he picked up the blessed dog, because I felt bad for his paws. Anyhow, I'm sorry to go on, but I am totally in favor of both, but with at least a phased in terms of money, because I understand the constraints, but to use the lot for the purpose that so many people said they wanted it used, which was medium and large events.
Are we going to have a chance to go through our whole thing? Because if, you know.
I want to hear from Tony on this question, and then I'm going to share my opinion, and then we'll move on to number 2. Yeah. And
Mayor, I'm on the mic.
indeed, I know, I was waiting for your text to go. My hand is up, okay. Tony, do you want to go, or do you want?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm happy to jump in. I don't want to comment on the lot, because at the moment, that's not the focus, I think, of our discussion.
Right.
Except I will precede my comments with my general past disfavor of the use of the lot for an event space. I think we have a number of medium and large events hosted privately in the city, which is adequate. The tension here is between developing a community, fostering a community sense that draws residents into our own downtown, that makes this part of our home, which tends to be with smaller events. And I think we've sort of lost sight of that. And there is, as much as we may hear from various business owners about a positive impact economically that some events may have, there is a tension where a number of businesses may complain about being cut off during larger events. There's not a right or wrong answer to that. Everybody experiences these events in different ways. But in terms of large events, I'm not comfortable with the city hosting those. We have enough privately, I think, to attract outer economic development. My preference is to develop a desire of residents to want to hang out in the downtown, in their own home, and to spend money on our own stores, and go to our own places, and to hang out in our parks, in Port Clinton Square, on the new furniture that we're putting into the downtown. I think that's an important thing, to be able to walk into our downtown and relax and enjoy being in our own home. And so I'm not all that crazy about the city hosting large-scale events.
Okay, thanks. Andres?
You know, as I think about our goal being economic development and vitality, and like two goals, but they're actually very intertwined. I also think that variety is a key concept as we look at variety of programming and venues and the setup. And I think it's a more inclusive approach that opens things up for more demographic groups. Not everybody's going to be attracted to everything, and that's fine. And I think that's why I like looking at keeping things interesting. That's what people want. And therefore, I would be very supportive of looking both for planning enhancements as well as a lot enhancements, because they're two very different venues in different geographic footprints and that accommodate different crowds and a different feel. And I think those different feels are good to have. If we just go for the intimate Portland feel only, I think we lose out on what happens when we have a larger venue. And we already go for large things, then we use the intimate thing to Councilmember Bloomberg's point. And so I think we can, rather than either or debate, I think I would encourage us to really think of the both and. And so I believe that our job as the city is to attract as much foot traffic to the city as possible. We're doing a lot of things to do that. And I think the smaller events as well as the large events increase foot traffic. And I think it's up to the retailers and the restaurateurs, now that we put more fish in the pond, if you will, or attracted more fish in the pond, for them to throw in their line hooks and then reel them into their establishments as good businesses should be doing, and many of them do that. So if we don't have more fish in the pond, then the retailer and restaurateurs are going to be limited on how many they can reel in. So I think there's sort of a law of large numbers there. And I don't, to the staff's point that, we cannot rely solely on our residents to bring the full economic vitality that a thriving downtown like ours needs. We need to be both a great place for residents as well as a destination. So I'm very supportive of these, investing, and I like the idea the staff came up with for both places. Now there's fine tuning, but better lighting in Port Clinton, access to bathrooms, a stage, I think those are very good, and the smaller events that we've had there have been nice, and I think once people see it as a rhythm, I think we'll get more people, and I think we create a space that's more attractive. But the live has been very popular, and I think, I'm not saying everybody, because again, from a diversity perspective, the live event is not for everybody, but if we pulled in 25,000 people over summer, that tells us, that's the proof right there. If we're doing proof of concept, did we attract enough people who had a good time there? I would say it's an incontrovertible, yes, we did. And so I would be wary of dismissing what has been a successful proof of concept, that we can have large events that are, attractive for many people, but the lot needs improvement. Now, I know we're not debating the full design of the lot, because that's been sort of put on pause for the time being, but even the incremental recommendations the staff is making to, and I won't list them all, but they're right on the PowerPoint, I think those are great ideas, and I would ask that if we go down that path, that even though we haven't decided as a collective, as a city council, to do the full lot thing, and who knows what that will augur in the future, that whatever improvements we make sort of be in the direction of that master plan, so that if we end up ever saying, hey, maybe it's a good idea, that we don't have to undo some of the incremental changes. So I think the incremental changes should be made with a master plan in mind, without necessarily committing us to that. So I would be in favor of increasing the whole thing. And there's other things that others have mentioned, and I won't repeat them, but why the lot could be improved by certain things to enhance it from just being a blacktop. And the final thing I would say in my comments here, I think from a big picture perspective, we know that we have deliberately from a policy perspective, we want more density, residential, for example, we decided that, so that we can put more foot traffic, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But as we invite more density in that's coming in, I think we have to be really diligent about making sure that we protect spaces that could become green spaces, so that we don't, as developers make offers or as we free up space or whatever, that we don't create so much density that we create a situation where we regret down the road that, oh, wouldn't it be nice if we had protected that space to become a green space? And I'm thinking very specifically about the lot. We know there's developers that want to put apartment buildings down the east side of St. John's, right across the lot. Great. And there's more development going on. And so I look at the lot space and all the proof of concept that we've done in terms of activities and effectiveness and the idea that we have. I really want us to think about, isn't that a good place to have some green, like a micro pavilion park, if you will? As the density of buildings gets deeper or gets more dense. So I would encourage us to also think about the longer urban planning here, and so those are my comments for now.
Great, thank you. Thank you for your input. The question that was asked was, should we continue to produce medium and large scale events? What's the purpose and the target audience? I'm in the yes category as well. I think maybe one or two in addition to the art show and the sidewalk sale brings us both the community vibrancy and brings in outside people and shows off what a great downtown business district we have. So my answer to one is yes. And what I see from my keeping count is that 4 are in favor and 3 are not in favor on question number 1. Is that accurate record keeping?
Yeah.
But
How, are you counting me as against large events?
I'm putting you as a no.
I
Are you a
don't
maybe?
think that's it really.
Yes or no? That's because we got to watch
It's
it.
part of the bigger picture. I mean, I don't mind absolutely large events in Highland Park.
Okay.
I'm saying that my issue is with the location that we're talking about investing in.
Okay, so I'm going to put you as a 4.5.
I'm in the same place.
All right, so now we're up to 5 because we're like yes and no, and it depends on where.
Right.
So that, because that's why, I mean, literally, that's why we broke these out into 3 questions, was so we could ask and answer that question. So I appreciate your amending sort of your responses. We kind of wiggled into question number 2, but I agree, I think it depends on where, for sure. That brings us to question number 2. Andres, thank you for your answer. I don't know if you have more to add, but I'm just going to say that I hear what you're saying, and you're a fan of using both. And Annette, I heard you say that you're a fan of using both. I have a response that I kind of want to share, and then I absolutely want everybody else to have an opportunity to talk as well. We were chosen by the U.S. Conference of Mayors and the National Endowment for the Arts as a case study for urban planning related and pertaining to sort of urban planning, supporting the arts, community vibrancy. And so I said, I think I've got a great one for you guys. So they came to talk to us. Geeta met with the woman who was in charge of this program, and what they are doing as a follow-up is several urban planners, several architects, and I, and then other mayors chosen from other places within the country are meeting actually in October to kind of go through our case studies. And I'm going to present this as our case study. But I have to tell you, the woman who came by said, "You're doing what here?" when she looked at the lot. She said, "This is incredibly narrow, incredibly long, incredibly hemmed in by railroad tracks, fully inaccessible from anything related to your central business district." And I said, thank you, for sharing that objective point of view. And I recognize there are ways to move things, but with the memorial in the front. And she said, "These bushes are crazy." And I said, "Perfect for a parking lot." And she said, "Absolutely, but not for what we're trying to achieve." I just feel that if we close Central maybe once or twice a year, I recognize it's maybe 4 or 5 days of inconvenience for people, but seeing what we were able to achieve this weekend and the number of people who came in, and it sounded like our restaurants were pretty darn happy that all these folks were marching around right in front of them. But I want to start even before that with saying we just spent $6 million to kind of fix up 2nd Street and to repave that entire segment of the city to me, it works beautifully as a flow to have people eat dinner and then come to something, or be at the something and then flow out into the rest of the community. I like the idea, like we had with the craft show when we had it over on Sheridan Road, and it looks like Andres is hung up, so we'll have to get him back. But to me, the cost of doing something at the lot is exorbitant. 6 million was the small version, 8 million was the large version. We have a whole great presentation on our capital improvement plan coming up later in this hour and a half, where that money, I think, also could be used. I appreciate the comment about putting green space in where there's a parking lot, but I have to remind people, there are parks directly across Central that are available right now with benches, with beautiful gardening. I know, the pocket park for sister cities that you water and weed, and the other park where there have been all kinds of great events have benches. They're not widely used. Okay. Are you back? Okay, still Peru, number one for soccer. So I was just sort of talking through where we are in terms of the cost of doing something at the lot versus Port Clinton. One concept that I had, and I know several of the owners of Port Clinton are here, was either having a long-term lease or some sort of way to build out empty space sort of pushed back into the Port Clinton first floor area to have a bathroom built out, a public bathroom built out, and potentially renting space for storage as well in the under or unused areas, or even possibly downstairs in one of the garages in a pod or something like that. But to me, it seems like we have spent millions of dollars building out the central business district, and why wouldn't we encourage people to come in? And I hear what you're saying in terms of the numbers and the capacity in Port Clinton, and I get that that's like Port Clinton. But then when you add the street, it basically comes with the same sort of impact, but is, to me, more of a comfortable situation. I mean, I gotta say, a million thanks to you and to Amanda and to Aaron and to everybody else who worked so hard on the lot. I wanted to love that place. And I recognize that there are ways that we can make it more friendly. But it to me was so hard because you had entertainment at one end, it was so narrow, and to connect with people, I don't know, that's one person's opinion out of 7. I would love to see that kind of activity in the Port Clinton Central Street area. And then, if there's a way to maybe do something on the east side that's specific, that can bring folks over there, that's me. Yeah.
If I could, just considering the time, we have a lot on this agenda, maybe let's hold on the long-term infrastructure investment, because that's a separate policy. But really, I think what we just need guidance on is for 2025, these are the events that we have planned. We have mirrored the same budget that we had in 24 pretty much for 25. So if I'm hearing you, the majority of officials support shifting events.
Yeah.
But I guess I just want to make sure. So Friday night concerts is already in Port Clinton, but the others, is there an interest in doing all of those in the heart of downtown outside Port Clinton? And I guess that's the policy feedback that we need. If there is support for that, we will communicate that with businesses and property owners, come back and give you their feedback. But I guess that's what we're looking for.
So I guess I got confused with 1, 2, and 3, the questions that were being asked there.
So we heard the majority of council members support the city continuing to invest close to $500,000 in medium to large scale events. So I hear the majority are saying yes for that.
Yes.
So that's
number 1.
Right, that's number 1.
Number
So
2.
the medium to large scale events for 25 for about $500,000 are all of these. And so the question is, what we had planned to do is have Friday night concerts in Port Clinton.
Mm-hmm.
The Taste, the Vintage Car Show, Stews and Brews would be at the lot. If you are not comfortable using the lot, then we just need to look for downtown streets is really the only way to do all those events given the capacity of them.
And I'd like to see that at Port Clinton and not at the lot. That's my vote.
Okay.
You mean?
I agree, and I just want to yes, thank you for mentioning Second Street and that connection to Port Clinton. Yes to that. But I want to add in that there are ways to reimagine Port Clinton Square. One of which is, considering getting rid of or remediating the level change that kind of separates the square from the sidewalk and the street. Just sort of opening it up that way. The other thing is that let me just say that I've mentioned this in phone calls, I think in phone calls or maybe an email, that Walker Brothers, we have a restaurant there, but its back is to Port Clinton Square.
Ask you to hold those notes, because they're looking for the 25 budget.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
we won't be able, no, but I don't want to not hear that. I'm just saying Gita's is exploding because we have a long agenda at this committee of the whole. But if you could share that in notes as follow-up, because I think those are really important points that need to be looked at in the longer term.
An investment there is what-
Absolutely.
Yeah, planning and design longer term, we can look at that.
We
for-
can
for
schedule that
planning.
conversation and start to budget for that as well, yes.
I agree with what you said. I'm in favor of doing events, but Port Clinton or some, if there's another location downtown, let's get the lot back reopened to cars so people have a place to park. I think when people are parking there or other places and the street is closed, then people are walking back and forth and they can go into our businesses easier than if they're just driving by. So I think there's a benefit to that as well.
Okay, Annette and then Marissa.
Sure. Okay. So I have worked with a couple of landscape architects whom I love. And they taught me to look at the outdoors as an addition of your house,
Right.
like a room. So when you go to a wedding and you have a large room, especially if you can push out the sides a teeny bit by getting rid of some bushes and the sidewalk, like the drawings that were produced for us eventually, which would widen it, everybody has the same view and everybody can participate in an equal way, even if you have bathrooms at one end and you have a stage at the other. And my problem with considering Port Clinton for large events is that it's completely separate. Second Street juts over, it's all the way up the street. There's a division of the room. Instead of having a flow or being open, there are literally buildings that, go around a corner and whatnot. And I just don't think it's as inclusive and one big room of space. I remember, what is it, Long Grove? It goes on an L shape. So you have a huge space, but half the people are facing one way and half the people are on the L. And what I love about the lot, irrespective of it being narrow, and I think the flow of the vintage cars and Stews and Brews and Taste of Chicago, open and people meander up and down. And when it's full, I think it has its own flow. So I would be in favor of keeping it there. And I see some infrastructure things I'd like to improve, but I would address those at a different point because they're to your point.
Thank you. Marissa and then Andres.
I was just gonna say, I also have some ideas with Port Clinton Square. Like, I'm thinking more from the family lens, but we'll talk maybe like play space or bringing in more families as well. And I don't know if this is similar to what Councilwoman Lidware said. Some of this events, like the Vintage Car Show and the Taste of Highland Park, did work well at the lot. But I do think, some of the other ones, like Taste of Highland Park, without the Spin Doctors, but with another big band, I would say more of the lot should be at Port Clinton Square, because I do love like the small concert series and make it more family-friendly place and have a lot more there. But I still think the lot, if possible, should still be used, and some infrastructure should be done there as well. So that's I'm a hybrid.
You're a hybrid,
I'm a-
okay. And Amy, I
Yeah.
remember you, for the art show, would have the stage either with its back to Green Bay Road or its back to the trains, and you were able to have huge, entertainment acts at those intersections with plenty of space for the stage. Yeah, absolutely.
Just for clarity, so if we close Central just from First to Second, and that's initially what we were looking at, just to allow traffic flow around the area, Just the stage can't be the size stage that we have at the lot. It's just the street is not wide enough and we need to be able to allow emergency vehicles in there. If we close more streets, that's where we're able to do what other applicants have done, because the stages can be on an angle, or it's okay to close them because other locations are closed as well.
Right, great. Okay, Andres is next, and then I'm gonna call on Tony, and then I'll come back to Yumi. Thank you.
Yeah, so I have a comment, but I just need a clarity, just need some things I didn't quite hear. It seems like there's not majority support of having events at the lot. Am I hearing that correctly?
Well, kind of.
Okay.
Are we, you are a no, you're a no, I'm a no. All right, yeah, the majority is opposed.
Okay.
4 people, I've said.
Okay. And then my follow-up to that before I give my comment is, but are we still looking at big events?
Yes.
Like Payton Park or some, in the Port Clinton space, right? That's still.
And potentially closing
Central.
Central to be able to have a bigger footprint.
Okay, got it. So, I don't know, can we, since things are moving in that direction, could we label next year as a pilot, right? Because right now, there's, opinion, right? And, legitimate opinion about the different points of view. And, I still feel that we have proof of concept that we did attract a good number for a lot, and we have some proof of concept based on Port Clinton Art Fair that, well, yeah, we can have a lot of people on that side. But I want us to be with a mindset that, well, how will our retailers feel? What will happen with the restaurants? And to just do it in the spirit of an important pilot, and because we're going to move after 3 years of the work on the lot, not only the events, but even the planning and the design for it, and then to just shut that down and say, we're going to Port Clinton, I would caution us to make it too declarative, because we can kind of give residents. If we frame it as a pilot, we say, hey, we piloted the lot, we have really good data for that, and now, there's things that work, but also things that didn't work. Let's move it toward Clinton, see that how much our investment for the whole downtown and the east side is paying off, what does it do for people, do our speculation and hypothesis that this might actually work. But I would urge us to frame it as a pilot so that we can let our residents know, look, we're still getting data. This is now a proof of concept. What if we all moved over and can we pull it off then? I think that would be something for us to think about. And one other comment I'd like to make is,
Sure.
I would agree that we should be thinking about this as a family space as well, not just a big event space for the big things and the intimate things. But, while a playground may not be the right thing for the reasons that the staff is not recommending that, I still would urge us to think about some interactive art that, children can play with, if you will, or interact with, or something that it's not just more tables and chairs on the stage, which is beautiful and wonderful and bathrooms, but to keep families in mind so there's something interactive for children to do. And I know that some retailers have been asking for that, I think families have been asking for that, and I would urge us as we enhance the Clinton that we really take into account some family needs in that direction.
We can look no further than this past weekend with what was set up by the Port Clinton Art Festival. They had this enormous bubble booth. They had interactive art booths for children, music. It was a place of joy. That took up the majority of Port Clinton during the art festival. And I just wanted to hang out there because it was such a happy place. So I think that was really well planned and just beautiful.
Mayor?
Yes.
Mayor, and just I can see how that works, right, for an event, great. But I'm saying for something more permanent, so that when people go on any given Thursday night for, the ice cream or whatever reason they go, that there is something there. It leave the pediatrics office and something is serving from the food shop they got.
Right.
That there's something there on an ongoing daily basis.
Okay. Well, thank you for that idea. We appreciate it. Tony, you are next, I believe.
I'll be very brief. My feeling about the lot, as you've said, it's too far away from downtown to have the kind of impact that I would expect if we're going to do that kind of event. And I liken it a bit to the expectations that were misset with Renaissance Place, which has a breezeway and an open area facing Green Bay Road that was intended to attract activities, and it's offset from the downtown just by a little bit, and it has never had any kind of activities that I've been aware of. I think there are other things that can be done with that parking lot that might be beneficial that have nothing to do with holding events there. And we can talk about that at another time. I think the size is not conducive to any of these kinds of things. We've had these events there. Some events have been more successful than others, but although I'm opposed to larger events, I think they would be much more successful in terms of economic development in the downtown, in the area that is immediately proximate to the downtown, which I think makes a lot of common sense. I would not want to see this done as a pilot plan, precisely for the reasons that Councilmember Tapia indicated, which is I want residents to understand this is the direction we're going. If it's a pilot plan, are we going to try this as a pilot plan this year and a different pilot plan next year? I would like to be definitive and say this is what we're going to do. We've talked about the lot a number of times. There's been a majority of the city council that really doesn't want to develop it. I think there's an appetite and a lot of common sense for placing this proximate to the downtown.
Thank you. Yumi, you are my closer on this topic, and then we'll move on to our next item.
I agree with you, Tony, and what you just said. And I guess, you know, I don't mean to, there's a majority consensus on this. Tony talked about it, different, you know, use for the lot. I'm not, you know, sure what that use would be, but a consideration, you know, is transit-oriented housing, or, you know, transit-oriented housing, offices, nonprofit, or, as I said in an email to you, a combination of that. But any investment there would preclude, you know, we wouldn't be able to do any of that. I think the heart of, you know, the city deserves this investment. And a total sidebar, the dog show idea. I saw that note about hot paws on asphalt, and Councilmember Lidor, you know, referred to it. I would hold that, you know, during the
In October.
early October.
Right. That was my first response was, well, don't do that in July.
Yeah. So, you know, we could do that anywhere, and at a different time of year. And that is, I think, what I wanted to say. I wanted also, I did mention in an email to you that you know, there are other cities. Wilmette, you know, has acoustics on the corner. They shut down their intersection every Friday and Saturday night throughout the summer to do it, their main intersection. There are other cities that are examples of these things. They're not by any means insurmountable. And I ask that, you know, maybe somebody, you know, if you happen to be traveling through Elmhurst, the city of Elmhurst, they've done a lot of extremely lively-looking development along their train tracks in terms of multi-story buildings, apartments, you know, multi-use buildings, and it's absolutely lit up at night. And so it's an interesting thing to consider. And that's it. Thank you.
That's it. Thank you for everybody's input, and Councilmember Tapia, thanks for joining us. I know you're signing off after this topic. We appreciate your input.
So just so we're on the same page, so in terms of next steps, we'll create, we'll look at site plans for relocation of these medium to large scale events. We will do some public engagement, get feedback from property owners, businesses, and then come back to committee of the whole.
And I'll report back from the conversation that I'm having with the urban planners and the architects.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you. Our next item is about lead service line replacement project policy.
So I'm going to introduce Public Works Director Ron Bannon. We also have colleagues from Robinson Engineering who are with us here this evening. And so we have a PowerPoint, and included in the packet is a detailed staff report. Again, we are looking for policy feedback as we roll out lead service line replacement, particularly for those private lines. And so we'll go through the presentation.
And do we, Gita? Is there much that's different from what was provided in the packet, or can we assume everybody did their homework in terms of saving time for the budget conversation? I mean, I love you guys and I love your PowerPoints, they're fabulous, but I think, you know, if everybody read what they were supposed to read in preparation, I think they're probably in a pretty good place to answer the policy questions you might have.
Sure, we can do that.
Okay.
Diane Larson, Rockets Engineering,
Hello.
she's our consultant with the lead service lines and has guided us through this process, as well as the application process for the grants, or I should say the loan funding that we are eligible to receive at 0%. So I think we can probably run through it pretty quickly and get to the policy, the main policy questions, which I think is going to be private service lines and how we want to handle that portion. I think that's the main thing. I mean,
I could do it in less than 10 minutes.
Go for it.
Okay. All right. So we're going over the program, specifically the elements that we've developed together. A little bit of background first. A service line is a 1.5-inch diameter pipe that brings water from the water main into the house. In Highland Park, we use meter pits instead of having the meter in the house. Historically, the city is responsible for the portion from the water main to the meter pit, and the resident is responsible for the portion from the meter pit into the house. There was a law, the Illinois Lead Service Line Replacement and Notification Act. It went into effect January 1st of 2022. There were three main elements of this act. The first one was a complete Illinois service line material inventory that required identifying the material on both the public and private side of every address. And city staff submitted this inventory April 15th of this year. The same day, they required an initial draft of a lead service line replacement plan. This plan is a report that details the program, the schedule of replacements, and the funding. And then the key date is April 15th of 2027. We need to submit a final plan by that date, and that is when mandatory replacements start. That rate is set by the number of services in your community. So we're estimating 2,000 lead service lines in Highland Park. That's 120 required replacements per year. We're estimating about $1.8 million per year, assuming $15,000 per replacement. So going into the project for this year, the city has been awarded a $10 million loan for replacements. This is the project area. It's the city boundary on the south, the train tracks on the east side, Deerfield Road on the north, and Ridge Road to the west. The loan is $333,000 in payments per year. It's a 0% interest, 30-year loan term. The scope of work, we're going to narrow it down a little bit. We developed the number of lead services in the project area through meter pit inspections and some interior inspections. However, we did find that we couldn't identify the material from the meter pit inspection accurately 100% of the time. So we will be doing some additional material investigation during design, which I'll discuss in the next slide. But preliminary estimates are that we can do 1,000 replacements during this project. And that would depend on the cost sharing program that we finalize.
this is 1,000 for this initial $10 million loan.
Yes.
Right.
Of like half of our services. In this
Half of our
first loan.
services and like 2/3 of the geography, right? Because I think the majority are concentrated on the east.
Yes, and this one is specific to the area that she highlighted. This is where these have to take place per the loan agreement.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So the loan, when we submitted the application, we had to submit a project area with it because it is scored by census tract.
Gotcha, okay.
So what we're gonna do in the design phase is we're gonna focus on addresses that had galvanized risers in the meter pits because we assumed they were lead, but we found that was not always the case. So we're gonna go in, we're gonna do an interior inspection. The photo up top shows a lead service. If it's lead, we're good to go. If it's copper, we're going to do water testing, water sampling, and that can show if there is a lead service underground.
Because what happens is they'll make repairs, and they'll make a repair into the house, but there's still lead existing out in the yard. You can't see it, so we check the meter pit, we see what's there, we check inside the house, and now we're just trying to verify what's in the middle, which we can be done with this testing.
So I think it's absolutely critical that whatever financial incentives we provide, we're consistent even when we're in our second phase. So just want to make sure that's on the record.
Yes.
Agreed, Mayor.
So we will plan to finish design in December, advertise for bids in January, open bids in February. In March, we have to issue the notice of intent to award, and we send the bid package to the IEPA for their review. They'll finish that review in May. They'll issue their loan agreement to be executed, and we can also execute the contract books in May. We can schedule the pre-construction meeting and the open house in May. Construction can start in June of next year, and with 1,000 services, we're expecting it to be 2 years. So we finish construction in June of 2027.
And can I ask, how come we had to define it as a portion and not the entire city?
Yeah, so this is specific to how the IEPA is scoring lead service line replacement funding. They are no longer scoring by municipality. They are requiring us to submit these funding nomination forms by census tracts. So we submitted a funding nomination form with the highest scoring census tracts for this year.
Okay.
Previous to that, they would look at the entire community and the median household income and those kinds of things, and last year, our loan was a 20-year loan at a low interest rate. I don't recall exactly what it is. 1.61, and we decided not to go with that one. And they changed the way the scoring works this year. And so when we applied, and that's why $10 million, 0%, 30 years.
And so, let's hope this doesn't happen, but if they're not willing to re-up the loan for the other 50%, where is that funding gonna come from?
We would apply for the loan again. Each project year needs, and this will be 2 years, but we'll need to apply for the loan again. And so if they have been tweaking continuously the way this process has worked, but I think at that point we will find the most advantageous way to apply, and hopefully score well.
And I have a slide later, but based on how they allocated funding this year, they gave out these 0% interest loans to every applicant that was eligible.
Okay.
So going forward, we can assume that they will look at every applicant that submits a funding nomination form, and once the forgiveness money is exhausted, they will allocate the loans to all applicants that are left. So we're pretty confident that Highland Park will continue to receive funding as long as the funding is available over the next 4 years.
So the other 2,000 and to the people who are not in the census tract, you're
Will be
thinking
in
down the
the
line,
secondary
the third.
tranche, so to speak, right?
Yeah,
Or,
yes.
okay.
And we also have this budgeted in our 10-year CIP, $5 million a year for the next 4 years, starting next year.
Great, okay, thank you.
So going into construction, the first step would be these exploratory excavations. These would be at addresses where we couldn't verify the material during design. It's a small excavation, so it'd be minimal impact and restoration required. The excavation would go down to the service line where you can see the material.
Is there a possibility that people may replace the line from the pit to the house, but then within the house, it sounded like you said there is a chance, but then that's gonna be on them to replace that, or still are part of this program?
If they had a partial lead in place, it's gonna be on us as part of this program to have it changed.
It will
So-
just be gone, okay.
Yes,
So-
and no partial lead is, at this point, they used to allow, for years and years, you would fix a piece of lead and you put in a
Right.
piece of copper and that was allowed. And now it's, you cannot fix copper temporarily in an emergency and then you have to, lead, and then you have to come back and replace it with copper. So in this case, if there's any lead, as part of this program, we would be changing it.
And were the schools and the hospital included in this, or is it only residential?
So all addresses, so that includes commercial, are included in this loan.
Great.
Typically, schools and hospitals have larger services that are unlikely to be lead, but we do confirm the material before they're not included.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? Oh, Andres, you have a question?
Well, I had a comment before I sign off. I'm glad there's a loan program, and I'm glad you asked the question about, well, you're going to need more, and then we have to ask for it. Okay, some risk there, but okay, got it. I'm very concerned about those who are low income. I mean, it's nice if there's a low interest loan, and assume they get to you all the time, but it's still a liability liability for a low-income family is going to be significantly higher than the city liability for higher income and middle-income people. And so as we look at policy, I don't know where the line is. I don't know if we have sliding fee scale or sliding, not scale, but reimbursement or subsidy by income levels. And I think sliding fee would be the most equitable one to take, because everybody's going to have to dig into their pockets no matter what. But we have to be careful. We don't really financially really damage people that welcome that liability is going to be significant, even if it's a low interest one.
So in the staff report, it talked about how property owners who qualify for the city's low-income assistance program would receive a 50% reduction, and I recognize that that's still money, but that we provide assistance for people who meet income eligibility limits as published annually by the U.S. Housing and Urban Development Department. And then also, there was something else in here in terms of,
Up here, the payment plan.
yeah, the payment plan. If you want to, yeah, because we talked about this very issue.
So when we looked at different options, certainly we were sensitive to the fact that, many people are living paycheck to paycheck. This is, in essence, kind of an unfunded mandate that they would need to do, but also recognizing that this is a private kind of line, responsibility. And so how can we really make it fair for those people who aren't going to be doing this program and having public dollars towards a private investment? So we feel like this is really the most fair approach. So if you're able to pay the $5,000, which again, keep in mind, this is already a discounted rate from the actual cost. And so if you're able to pay it upfront, great, and then, we'd manage the work. That second option is to do a 5-year plan. So really, $83 a month that they would get on a plan. We would charge a nominal fee just because of the loan agreement and processing and time involved in administering that. But that seemed like a good option for people that just, I just really need to be on a payment plan for a variety of different reasons. We talked about the possibility of a sliding scale based on income, but that just leads to a whole lot of subjectivity and things changing and people lose their jobs and, different things happening. But we go back to that HUD program for low assistance. That's an established program. It's pretty much black and white. You meet it or you don't. And then for those individuals, an even further reduction to 50% of that discounted rate we thought was the most fair approach.
Okay. Kim?
Quick question. I think this makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate you putting thought into it. $500 fee for the loan or the payment plan seems to me like a lot. I don't know if there are comparable programs that we can benchmark to. But if someone can't pay it up front and then they've got to pay it 110%.
A $500 fee on top of that.
Yeah, we talked about it. We look at, even just right now with water billing, there is a lot of follow-up. We are taking calls. People have a payment plan and they want a different payment plan, and then we're following up, and, circumstances change. So I wish it was as easy as you're on a payment plan and thank you, we'll just talk to you every month and see you in 5 years, but it's a lot of administrative work. And so that's where we felt, we don't want to make it so easy that everybody's going to be like, oh, put me on a payment plan. But at the same time, we are certainly willing to do the work, but it is going to take time.
Marissa?
Have you looked at surrounding suburbs in terms of the cost sharing, and how does ours compare to surrounding?
Not all are doing cost sharing. The ones that are doing it, some don't have a low income aspect at all. The answer was we don't do anything low income in this community. And then others, if they have a very small amount of lead service lines, they're just covering the cost 100% on the village or city side. They're saying, hey, we only have a handful, we're just going to take care of it and do it and be done. For communities of our size, it's still yet to be seen how people are going to, or how these municipalities are going to make the decisions as far as the cost share aspect. But I think most do believe when the free or forgiveness money ran out, some communities were awarded in the beginning 100% forgiveness, almost like grants. And in those cases, they did assume the entire cost. If they're going to start paying interest, we feel like the trend is going to be towards having the private side pay some towards that. Sure. Go ahead.
Another issue with looking at neighboring communities is that a lot of them haven't started large-scale replacements yet. Evanston's one that has, but they got forgiveness because some of their census tracts are disadvantaged. So it's not comparing apples to apples. So they're not doing cost sharing. Skokie was one that is doing cost sharing. So there's not a huge amount of communities that we could look to.
Okay. Thank you.
So what questions do you need answered?
Well, we wanted to, sorry.
No, go ahead.
We wanted to, of course, confirm this approach to the private side. And also, I think it's important to just talk through, we're gonna be in people's homes, and it kind of creates this uncomfortable situation where we're doing city work and now into people's homes. And so, as far as the way the policy or the proposed way of handling this would be, is that the city would be responsible for patching the area where the new service comes in, potentially installing the meter and that kind of thing, but we're not going to, redo people's theater rooms or basements and stuff like that, so it would be patch the area. If they wanted to do paint and drywall, that would be on them and not on the city. So we will see.
Yes.
Diane can speak to what the IPA will cover as well.
Yes. So this next slide just shows some of the restoration that would be required after replacement. Very odd cuts in drywall. The IEPA does cover patching, but if it is old tile or old carpet and they can't find a match for that, they will not cover a full room replacement of tile or carpet. Another issue with having this contractor do the work is that they're an underground utility contractor. They do not specialize in this kind of work. They're going to be focused on the logistics of replacing the housing services. It's a big job for them. We think that a resident will be happier and have more control over the quality of this restoration if they're able to choose their own contractor.
I know people won't be happy if they have to do their own work, but it is a very difficult, as Diane's pointing out, it's a difficult proposal because every house is different. And so as you try to put those design specs together, you're trying to plan for slab houses, basements, crawl spaces. There's just a variety of options, finished basements, unfinished. So in the perfect scenario, of an unfinished basement, pop the new service in, put it in, patch it, gone. But if it's if it's more than that, or it's a theater room, each one is unique and each presents unique challenges. And I think we just have to be careful about getting too far down that road because we've
It is
been
dangerous. Some
we've been
people
down that
have
road.
Italian marble that they brought in, and we could like never be done with people's restoration of their property if we
And if I
say
can
they
just
were
say
gonna
also, I mean, they're gonna know, each one of these homeowners will be met with individually in the home. We have to see what we're working with here. So there should really be no surprises at the end of this of what exactly will be done to perform the work and what will be restored. And they'll know what is gonna be on their responsibility and what the city's going to take care of. And if they decided that they don't wanna move forward with it, there is a provision
Waiver.
that they have to sign a waiver that says the city tried to replace it, and if we're not gonna allow you in the house. The city will have to follow back up periodically, and if that house sells, we'll have to make the attempt again. So it's more logistical paperwork on our part to try to track, but the people could say, you know what, I'm happy with my lead service line, stay out of my house, move on to the next one.
Can I just, that very issue is becoming a big issue throughout the state. And the state of Illinois is taking the initial position that if a homeowner refuses access, it's still on the city. And somehow the city needs to work it out and the city can be penalized. It's evolving, and I've experienced this in other towns where residents have refused access or refused to pay and therefore refused access. We'll continue to we're looking at this more globally beyond Highland Park, and we'll continue to advise you. But just wanted to.
In my humble opinion, the IPA wants these changed, and they're kind of like, hey, municipality, you figure out the best way. You know your municipality best. You figure out the best way to approach it. Right.
Gotcha. Okay, we still need to talk about forestry and the CBD as well as our capital improvement plan. So if you could quickly share your comments and then we can move on. Thanks. Annette?
This is kind of like a night.
I'm signing off now. Bye, everybody.
All right,
Bye,
take care.
Annette.
Thanks for joining us.
Until now, I was thrilled with this, and you're not an insurance company, but I think that people are gonna look at this and say, well, you should, like for like, replace it all. And I think this is like a can of worms from a legal perspective, and it's really, I'm thrilled you have the fact about the waiver that they can opt out of it, so I think that's really good. I do think in terms of who you contract with, to just say, well, we're just not using anybody other than people who are more underground people. I don't know if there's a way to bring on one more carrier who is more of an interior person, so maybe you wouldn't end up with a squiggle over there, maybe someone who knows how to do it better. At least we could be seen as making the effort to do it, because if they're responsible for doing it, I think every one of these people is a potential lawsuit for not bringing it back to code or just opting to waive out. So I just wanted to state that for the record, because that's really scary. That picture, I'm not sure, I would go forward with it, and I completely support what you're doing.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, wherever the water line is where the water line is. We replaced our water line at one point. I think we have to be really clear, we have to communicate very precisely with the residents what it's gonna be. And I think after we have that in-house visit, there should be something in writing that is.
With photographs.
Yeah, that is very clearly stating this is what is gonna happen.
Right.
And this is what the restoration will be, and the rest is on you. Because I agree, I don't think we can do anything to do that restoration properly. It's gonna be different in every home, and that should not be the city's responsibility. I think it's nice of the city to do a cost share at all, as someone who had to pay the whole thing to
Right.
replace my water line.
So did I, yep.
so did I.
Answered the question that I raised my hand initially for, what if homeowner refused for their portion? My gut instinct is that they will be able to refuse. I mean, but anyway, but you'll know better. And I think the cost sharing plan is reasonable, and the payment plan is reasonable, even for, I dare say even for, the affordable housing piece, the lower income families. If you own a home, that is probably something that you can afford to do. But that's just my guess, and
Thank you.
If I could just point out one more policy, so on the outside for excavations, so what we're proposing is we would obviously restore the area with the grass or seed. So if we're coming up towards the house and you can make an excavation, and you have your favorite flowers or something like that, you'll have an opportunity to remove them and then maybe replant, but the city, at least what's proposed, would not be, we would be putting it back grass, or sod, but not replanting certain bushes and that kind of thing.
What about hardscape? How do we deal with that?
If hardscape comes into play, we'd have to fix it at some point to some level.
And also, to add to that, the methods of installation are relatively, they're not invasive. It's going to be directional drilling. There will be an excavation over the water main and at the meter pit. So it's not going to be a trench through the whole yard.
Amazing. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Okay, everybody answers to your questions? Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you. We're gonna swap out trees, for the budget conversation. Maybe we'll come back to trees. Do you want to do the library budget first so that those guys can go home?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. We have a PowerPoint, which we're going to bring up momentarily, but I will just kick us off. We have a presentation scheduled this evening as part of our budget workshop. Certainly, as the council knows, we start our budget process in the spring, and it takes us through the end of the year. I do want to just take a moment to introduce and recognize Finance Director Julie Logan. Julie has been with the city for 10 years. This is her last
I promise to
budget
hang on to your
presentation.
ankles and not let you leave.
So Julie came to us from the private sector after a very successful career, and it has really been our joy and pleasure to have her representing the city as the finance director. She has such a wealth of knowledge and wisdom, and we have really benefited from that. So grateful for her for her hard work and dedication. We have a sound succession plan in place, and so we had announced Christy succeeds her as the city's incoming finance director. Julie's last day will be the end of September the 27th, and so we're going to recognize her at a city council meeting, and we have a reception that the public can attend as well to recognize her. And again, we want to thank you for your service and commitment to the city, and also congratulate Christy.
Absolutely.
So I will turn it over to them in a moment, but this is everything that we are going to cover as part of the agenda this evening. When we start the budget process, we always start with the mission of the city. So that's a policy question that we ask the mayor and city council at our budget workshop in the spring. We want to make sure that the mission, which is the one thing that really unites all city representatives, that it still reflects the policy direction of our organization. And over the years, we've made some changes to it, but this is the mission that's going to be guiding us for fiscal year 25. And the priorities that you see listed below there are the priorities that also guide us for 25. And so when we look at new initiatives and endeavors, we always come back to these two. Does it align with our mission? Does it align with our priorities? And if that answer is yes, then we move forward accordingly. And we also keep the mission regularly before city employees, and the priorities, certainly the council knows that they're on the bottom of every PowerPoint presentation, they're on our letterhead memos, and so again, very important that we continue to reinforce our priorities with the public as well. This is the budget schedule that we rolled out in the spring. You can see where we are today with the workshop on August 26th. So the steps that we have taken, whereby the budget, which is really our principal policy document, reflects not only our staff recommendations and council recommendations, but certainly public feedback. And so that happens all year long, and particularly as we gear up for the budget process in the spring and summer. And then you can see the remaining calendar events that are going to take place thereafter for the balance of the year. So we are going to start with the library. They're welcome to join us for the rest of our committee of the whole, but they can see themselves after. So it's my pleasure to introduce Library Director Heidi Smith and Board Member Rob Ohan.
I'm going to kick us off, and then President Rob Olin will take us home. Okay. Again, I'm Heidi Smith. I'm the Executive Director of the Highland Park Public Library. I'm going to be covering the first 4 parts of our agenda, and then Rob will cover the second 4. Starting with strategic initiatives, as the community's third space, a space where you don't have to buy anything to come and hang out, the library focuses on lifelong learning for all ages and all types of learning. We make sure that our resources are optimized and calibrated to meet the varying needs of our community and the varying wants of our community. We work to be a strong organization, continuing to invest in staff education, human resources, just to name a few. Creating connections is also an important part of our approach in building strong relationships not only with partner agencies in the community, but also with our community. Here's our organizational chart, which has not changed from last year. So that's for your reference. Here's one way I can move us along. In 2024, we're very proud to report on our accomplishments in planning an expansion project for 2025, more to come on that. We're also very proud of the programming that we provided to the community. The meaningful experiences that people get to have at the library varies from one-on-one support, which we report to the state as programs, one-on-one technology support, as well as concerts, story times, all the fun and enriching activities you can do at the library. Including in that special programming, like our Library University, where you can come and take a class. Not only can you learn the basics of Canasta, but you could also come, stay, and come back for a strategy class. Very popular. In terms of grant funding, the libraries have been successful this year in securing grant funding to support programming, equipment, materials, and more. In terms of intergovernmental cooperation that I mentioned earlier as one of our 4 priorities in creating connections, the library hosted I Read with the 112 Foundation, participated in Martin Luther King Day of Service. Art in Bloom was also hosted at the library, and it was so much fun. The first year for that event, and hopefully the first of many. We continue our partnership with the city and the Highland Park Historical Society to support the archives and local history of Highland Park community. And we also host and participate in book match events with 112. Our objectives for 2025, some continue on and some are new. For our strategic plan activities, we're going to be carrying forward those 4 pillars that I went over. And in addition to executing the Expansion 2025 plans. So as you can imagine, one of the key focuses will be in maintaining the great services during a tough time while parts of the building are under construction. The library aims to be open the majority of the time for construction. There may be a closure for a week here and there to move and remobilize collections, but that's our goal. We'll continue to manage an annual budget that supports the needs of the library and therefore the community. We'll continue to search for grants and gifts. We're also going to make sure that intergovernmental efficiencies are in place, both for cost-effective goods and services, and that we continue with the bottom line here to continue enriching the community with information, literacy, technology, cultural services, programs, and fun. All right, back up the fun part.
Good evening, I'm Rob O'William, the board president, and I'll walk you through the budget quickly, and I'm happy to answer any questions. To some extent, you can look at the top line and the bottom line and know a lot of what you need to know. We're going to be increasing property taxes more than we have in the past several years. And the main reason for that is the bottom line, we're taking on debt service to fund the expansion of the library. As you can see, taxes will go up $478,000 and debt service will go up $430,000. Some of that, of course, is we will be gaining interest on the bond proceeds that we'll be getting early in the year that we won't be paying out until later in the year. So the interest line of our income budget is considerably higher than we expect it to be next year, and certainly a lot higher than it was last year. Of the actual costs, you'll see an increase in personnel costs. Part of that is cost of living. Another part of that is we're going to be adding positions starting mid-year, reflecting what will be happening when the new space is constructed, and filling some positions that are currently unfilled. So that's the personnel line. The books, AV, and resources line is going up. A lot of our effort now is ebooks and so on, and those are expensive. I mean, more expensive actually to provide because of the licensing restrictions than buying a hard copy of a book. People want ebooks, so we provide those. The supplies and services line is up because we expect to have increased landscaping expenses, fencing expenses, and so on associated with the construction project. So we're allowing for that. Programs, marketing, and postage is up significantly, largely on the marketing line because we're going to attempt a major development effort to help fund the expansion, something we've never done in the past. But we're hopeful the community will be receptive to that and enable us really to make a significant dent in the expansion costs through fundraising. And the training and staff line is up largely to provide some security training for the staff. We looked at doing something else with respect to security that was more expensive. But we've had some issues at the library over the past couple of years because, as Heidi said, it's an open, welcoming space, and anybody who wants to walk in walks in. Proximity to the train station means that a lot of people who aren't residents come to Highland Park, and the library is the closest place they can walk into without anybody looking at them askance. And so we at least felt the need to provide some additional training to the staff on how to deal with these kind of things when they come to work in the morning and there are 3 people sleeping on the stairs or something like that. So those are the large increases other than the debt service, which I think is self-explanatory. Any questions before I move on? Yes, from the one. Our capital improvement plan You see here again, largely dominated by the expansion project in 2025. We're expecting an additional, oh, sorry, I gotta move this, there we go. Move it on my iPad. An additional renovation project we would expect to carry out in 2031. The rest of it, again, is just sort of ongoing stuff that we have to do to keep the library up to date. You know, whether it's elevators and HVAC and things like that. And all that we anticipate it being able to fund out of our typical funding that we've had for years to provide for capital improvement, and the expansion project, of course, funded by debt, which will be paid off. You see that at the bottom. I don't think there's anything particularly unusual there, but again, if people have questions, I'm happy to answer them. Just a quick run through of what the expansion will accomplish. We've presented the expansion project before, but these are the big five. Sorry. No, I'll do it. I remember that I'm changing pages. Accessibility, we've not been ADA compliant for years and years. We're finally going to get to that. Address space for youth services from young children through teens. The city archives will be expanded, improved, climate controlled, and made appropriate and larger. We will have a new community meeting space that accommodates many more people than our existing auditorium can accommodate, and then a maker space, which is where people can come and do all the kinds of things you can do in our neighborhood library. So I'm going to move you before I move this. We started out with a project estimate of almost $7 million. It may be creeping up a little bit based on what our architect is telling us. We'll see. We may just have to do some value engineering, or we may be very successful with the fundraising and be able to do a little more. But here's how it will be funded. We've put $375,000 into the levy this year. We've been accumulating a reserve, as you know, over the past several years, and we will be transferring that into the construction project. Heidi and the staff were very successful in getting a 6-figure construction grant from the state, and then we will have the $4 million in bond proceeds coming that you saw the debt service for earlier. Here's a look at our fund balances, all very healthy. Again, a credit to Heidi and the team for managing things so well through the past several years. They've enabled us to get in a position where we will be able to move a lot of money that we have been reserving into the expansion project. And going forward, you know, our reserves, rather than being budgeted every year, will be, if we do have an end of year with a surplus, that'll go back into a reserve fund, and hopefully by the time we get to 2031, we'll be able to fund that expected renovation at that point. That was all we wanted to say quickly.
Nice.
Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great team.
Congratulations. Retirement is great, I can tell you that.
Okay, maybe because I'm retiring, I brought up paper. Okay, good evening, everyone. It's really an honor to be standing up here. When I took this job, I thought it was going to be like 3 years, and here we are 10 years later.
Thank you for your service.
It's really been an honor to work with all of you. What I can say is that we're leaving things in very good hands. Christy is to take things over. So I think that you'll be very, very pleased with the succession plan. And as we kind of start this, it wouldn't be, the right thing to say that, Julie puts together this budget. This is really the culmination of, working with the council, working with the staff, and a lot of heavy lifting in the finance group. So really, it's hats off to all the staff that has been working on it, and the direction from City Council, and some heavy lifting from finance. So everyone's been working together on this. I'm showing a lot of similar charts to the prior year, so no big surprises in how we're actually going to look at things this year. The top charts here are showing the trend of city total and operating revenue over the last several years. 2025 operating revenue is targeted at $99 million, and it's expected to be slightly higher than 2024, with 2024 3% higher than the prior year. Now, operating revenue excludes bond proceeds, the debt and tax increment financing levies, asset sales, capital-related grants, reimbursements, and transfers between funds. So the operating is really the ongoing revenue. 2025 total revenue is expected to be about $125 million. That's expected to be 4% lower than 2024, with 2024 expected to be 19% higher than 2023. So you can see how those non-operating things like debt and asset sales and things can really swing the revenue. The charts at the bottom of the page show city revenue by fund and by revenue source. The charges for services and property sales and other taxes make up about 74% of our revenue sources, and then the general water and sewer funds account for about 66% of revenue. So I'm going to go on to talk about the year-to-year changes, and then I'll show the trends for those three funds, since they make up such a large percent of revenue. Okay, two sides of this chart here. On the left, as you're looking at the side, it's showing the changes from 2023 to 2024, and then on the right, the changes from 2024 to 2025. The significant drivers of the 2025 increases include higher water, sewer, and property tax revenue driven by rate changes, which we'll discuss in a couple of slides. Higher sales tax revenue, significantly driven by the market, and higher internal charges. Net of a couple of reductions, lower interest income as we assume interest rates will moderate going into the next year, and then lower operating grants and reimbursements consistent with the needs of those grants. The 2025 non-operating changes are really changes in transfers between funds, and net of changes in capital grants, reimbursements, and debt financing. And all of that is just really consistent with the needs of financing for the long-term plan. So it's really consistent with the 10-year CIP, and we'll discuss that in a few slides as well. There were some increases in tax and increment financing revenue, and that was really consistent with market-driven EAV changes. Similar chart as to the first one we saw for the general fund revenue, with showing the trend at the top of the chart, and then the sources of revenue on the bottom of the chart. 2025 operating and total revenue are expected to be 2% lower and 2% higher, respectively, than 2024. So operating 2% lower, total 2% higher. The 2025 operating revenue is impacted by a higher reallocation of property tax out of the general fund to other funds, significantly to fund capital improvements, and that's really minimizing the property tax levy increase that would be needed overall. So that's the reason for that transfer, and we'll discuss that obviously in a couple of slides when we talk about capital. Again, we're expecting lower interest income with moderating interest rates, and for 2025 total revenue, that's impacted by higher capital-related grants and reimbursements, and then the sale of the city's 54 Laurel property in the prior year. So there was a gain on that. The chart at the bottom of the slide is really showing the revenue sources, and if you look at the top 5 revenue sources, sales tax at 33%, asset sales and other at 14%, charges for services at 13%, state income tax at 10%, and then property tax at 8%, representing the top 5 sources of revenue in the general fund. Moving on to the water and sewer funds. This is 2 funds kind of combined. They're similar funds, so I'm talking about them collectively. Again, at the top of the chart, you have the trend across the years, and then the revenue sources at the bottom of the chart. 2025 operating and total revenue are expected to be 3% higher and 24% higher respectively than 2024. And the 2025 operating revenue is impacted by proposed rate changes, and we'll discuss those in just a little bit later in the presentation. The 2025 total revenue, in addition to the operating impacts, is also impacted by changes in capital-related debt financing, grants, reimbursements, and transfers between funds, again, consistent with our CIP program. The chart at the bottom shows the revenue sources, and since this is a business-like fund with revenues responsible for funding the expenses, the revenue is significantly customer-driven, with 84% of revenue from user charges. So next I'll be discussing proposed tax and fee changes for 2025. I've been referring to next in the presentation, so here we are. The city diversifies its revenue stream and manages expenses to minimize the financial impact of city operations to the taxpayer. The city regularly reviews fees and taxes to ensure that revenue is appropriate to fund the costs of providing the city's high level of services. The 2025 budget includes changes for the fees and taxes listed on this chart. And the detail of these changes was included in the packet. The next several slides, we're going to go through it and summarize these tax and fee changes. Admin hearing fines currently do not accrue late payment fees. This is inconsistent with the city's other payments, which generally do accrue late payment fees should there be late payments. So staff is recommending a $50 late payment fee for admin hearing fines. The City Council reviewed and supported this proposal during the May spring workshop. Staff recommends an amendment to City Code Section 150.2145, development cost offsets related to affordable housing units. In past practice, City Council has consistently waived the Affordable Housing Fund's obligation to pay for the impact fee waivers of private developments with affordable units. Staff's recommendation, here's a lot of words on the slide, but the recommendation is really just bringing city code in alignment with the city's past practice. Again, City Council reviewed and supported this proposal during the May spring workshop. The city's ambulance transport fees are updated annually to align with the State of Illinois Healthcare and Family Services Provider Information Sheet in order for the city to receive payment, which is equivalent to Medicaid or private insurance. The updates are shown on this chart, and the City Council reviewed and supported this proposal during the May spring workshop. Staff surveyed local municipal property taxes for the 2023 tax year, taxes being collected in fiscal year 2024. The city's portion of the total tax rate continues to be the lowest in the comparative group of municipalities at 7.6% of the total, versus the average amongst the competitive the other municipalities of 13% of the tax bill. The city's total rate of 8.8, including all taxing bodies, is slightly higher than the average of 8.5, and that is significantly driven by the school tax rates and not the municipal part of the tax rate. The city and library portions of a resident tax bill are currently 7.6 cents and 2.4 cents per dollar, respectively, as of the 2023 property tax being collected in 2024. The largest portion of the city's 7.6 cents really goes to pay for public safety. The combined city and library proposed tax levy for next year is 8% higher than the prior year combined tax extension. This includes a city levy of $18.3 million, which is 8% higher, and a library levy of $5.8 million, which is 9% higher. The city levy the city levy increase totals about $1.4 million to pay for higher debt payments on debt issued for capital improvements and higher road maintenance costs. The city 8% increase is higher than the 7% increase discussed during the May spring workshop, and it's significantly due to a higher level of city council prioritized projects between May and today. The library levy increase totals approximately $478,000 to pay for higher debt payments on new debt issue for the library's expansion that we heard about, along with higher personnel and operating costs. The total combined increase is about $125 impact to a city taxpayer based on an average $500,000 equalized assessed value of the property's taxpayer's property. The city expects to continue to have either the lowest or one of the lowest municipal tax rates compared to local municipalities, even subsequent to this tax levy increase. I'm going to pause here because there was a change since the May workshop, and because staff is requesting city council concurrence with this proposal to move forward with the budget process, and I just want to know if there's any questions on this.
Is everybody okay with that change and recognize the need to do it? Okay.
Thank you.
Susan, I do have a question. Does that take into account some of the things that, like we're accepting today and future meetings in terms of changes in costs for different projects and whatever?
No, so for example, like the lot, expenses or budget mirrors what we had in '24, so any additional costs are not reflected.
But like the senior center costs and everything
Right.
that are
Yeah,
increases.
that's this year's budget. That'll hit this year and this one.
Okay,
Yeah.
but that's covered. I just want to make sure.
Yes.
Okay, staff updated a survey of selected other municipal taxes, and this was.
I'm sorry, Julie.
Absolutely.
The library levy, is the debt for the addition in the library levy, or is it in the debt?
It's in, okay, we have a very kind of interesting thing here in Lake County. So it's in the library's levy, but when you look at the tax return, you're just gonna see library levy, you're not gonna see a separate debt levy. Lake County hasn't been interested in having the library debt levy put on a separate line of the tax return. So it's not in the city's levy, but it is in the library levy, but you won't see a library debt service. You're just gonna continue to see a library levy. Yeah.
I also have a question.
Absolutely.
I know the state decided to get rid of the 1% grocery tax that the city was receiving the revenues for, even though that's really not their money to decide that on. So are we, and that was to the tune of, I think, $850,000 of revenue that they've now decided that we don't need to have. Have we dealt with that in this budget, and are we going to need to re-levy to reaccrue those resources, or is that part of what we're seeing in terms of this increased property tax?
So it's not a part of the increase in property tax. That will be effective in 2026, not
Okay.
2025.
So that's a conversation that we need to have in the future.
But in general, as you look at the long-term plans, the assumption in the long-term plans is that would somehow get replaced. The city would put its own grocery tax out there. If the city does not want to put its own grocery tax, then it would potentially have to consider changes.
Finding the money elsewhere.
That's correct.
Okay.
And we are working with communities in the Northwest Municipal Conference and kind of proceeding with a coordinated approach. And so looking at, so it's not just one community considering it.
It's how are we all
Identifying.
addressing this removed revenue
Yes.
from our bottom
Yeah.
line?
So we'll keep you posted on that.
You know, and I meet with the Lake County finance directors once a month, and there is, everyone's kind of waiting for the other guy to go first. So,
Okay.
but everyone is having the discussions on how to proceed with this. Any other questions?
I don't see them.
Okay. Okay, a lot of numbers on here, and I apologize for that, but this is a survey of selected other municipal taxes. And we share this with City Council in the May Spring Workshop. The city continues to be well-positioned for these particular taxes. So staff is not recommending any changes to these taxes consistent with our discussion during the Spring Workshop.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, staff is recommending 3 community development fee changes. The first is removal of legacy fees no longer in use for when the city was directly involved in alarm monitoring. And then in relationship to that, fee name changes to improve the clarity of Chapter 125 alarm fees. Since 2015, alarm monitoring is really a private arrangement between property owners and whatever service provider that they provide. So some of that legacy language just needs to come out of the city code. Removal of legacy fees no longer in use from when the city required payment of a fee in lieu of providing otherwise required parking spaces per City Code Section 15807B. City Council amended that section of the code in 2023, and the annual fee resolution didn't get updated. So this is just the annual fee resolution catching up with that code amendment change. And then inclusion of penalties for several sections of the city's code, which don't currently have penalties listed. These were all discussed with City Council during the May workshop, and City Council did support these changes. Public Works proposed fee changes. Staff proposes changes in relationship to the water turn-off and on fee and the permit fee die test in order to really help offset inflationary higher costs of services. The new fees will continue to not fully cover the cost of service, but and so there'll be, some costs will be subsidized by other general revenue. The way in which local municipalities cover these types of fees, it's not really standard, so it's hard to say, okay, everyone else is doing it this way, or everyone else is charging this. But the way that the fees are updated, the proposal, they appear to be comparable with those municipalities that are charging a specific fee for these services. City Council reviewed and supported these proposals during the spring workshop. Senior Center fees. Membership and programming fees for the Senior Center have not really changed since 2017, but here we are in 2024. The market has definitely escalated our costs since 2017. So there's updated fees that are shown in this chart, and although the updated fees won't cover all of senior center services, they will help offset a higher percentage of the cost. I'm going to pause and just, we didn't have these fees at the time of the spring workshop. We had referred that they would be coming, and I just want to request that City Council have any questions, or do you concur with these changes?
And we are doing a presentation at the next committee of the whole focusing on senior center operations and programming, but we're just looking for your feedback and concurrence on specifically the fees tonight.
So one question that I have, not to be disparaging to my dear friends in lower decades, but do we need to have it be accessible to people 50 and above versus 60 and above? And the reason why I ask this is so much of what they are doing, and my understanding, is getting discounted tickets to see stuff, which is a lovely thing. But if we're, trying to figure out where our money's being spent and who's receiving the benefits of the programs, I don't know that providing funds so that people in their 50s can get cheaper tickets is the best use of our resources.
So maybe if we could talk about that at the next meeting, because then the senior center manager will be here, and then we
Perfect.
can give you a breakdown of our membership by decade.
And I love Broadway in Chicago, and I love people in their 50s, but I just am kind of like, do we need to be, subsidizing? Yes, Kim?
My only other question is, you don't have the prior fees.
I don't, they were
so
nominal, $5 here, $10 there, nothing more significant, nothing doubled.
So the non-resident fee, I would kind of want to be twice the resident fee. But I don't know how much of a change that is from the
Right.
existing. Because I don't think we should be subsidizing non-residents as much
To
as
go to
we-
Broadway in Chicago in their 50s.
Right.
It's a good deal.
Our rationale has generally been because we have our own residents as well as other residents that are members of a number of senior centers. And so we just wanted to make it affordable so they can continue to do that. But we could certainly increase it.
So let's talk about that, I guess, you need to know the answer to this now.
Well, just from the standpoint of what we're gonna be putting into the proposed document.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, if you want to double it for non-residents,
Yeah.
So if you do 70 and 120 instead of 60 and 110, I don't think that's.
and all three of them will be mad at us. No, I'm just fine.
Yeah,
I
right.
mean, I think that just reduces the amount that we subsidize non-residents
Yeah.
to go to these
Broadway in
events.
Chicago.
Yeah.
Okay.
$10, we got it.
Okay, great.
And again, I know there's great programming at the senior center, but that to me just sort of seems like a great example of sort of maybe a better use of our dollars.
Taxi licenses, the city has waived collection and enforcement of taxi licensing since about 2021, when the demand for taxi cabs and limousines started declining. So staff is recommending rescinding chapter 111 due to that decline, and city council reviewed and supported this in the spring workshop. Okay, this slide shows an updated long-term water and sewer rate plan for 2025 through 2029. It shows over the 5 years a 3.5% increase for the water fund. This is lower than what we presented during the spring workshop as we kind of done more detailed work on the water fund. And the sewer rate increase is also just coincidentally 3.5% per year, and that the sewer fund 3.5% is consistent with the rate that was proposed during the spring workshop. The water rate increase to $4.12 per 100 cubic feet of water for city residential customers is 14 cents higher than 2024. The water rate continues to be one of the lowest in the Chicagoland area. I'm just going to switch quickly to the survey that the staff does every year and shares with City Council. We shared a preliminary version of this during the spring workshop. We have been able to get some preliminary 2025 proposals for some of the municipalities, so they're indicated there, whether it's a 2025 proposed or the 2024 actual. And the Highland Park proposal rate is in orange there and continues to be one of the lowest in this group of computers.
Annette and then King.
I just have a question. How does Wilmette do this for so much lower? And I only pick on them because we are like, when you see us way at the top, which is great, we're all bunched together. It's not that big a difference, but Wilmette is just so much lower than everybody. How did they do that?
I don't know, I haven't analyzed their structure. I don't know, I'd have to go look at their fund. Could they be subsidizing it out of the general fund? Could they be subsidizing it with property taxes? I don't recall, but I think they potentially may have done a bond issue that is not being paid for out of the water fund. So, it's really hard. It's not always apples to apples. So maybe their cost structure is a lot lower. It could be. I'm so doubtful. You know, I'd really have to go look
They
at
could be
it.
spending less on the infrastructure.
Yeah, maybe, that was my first thought.
I mean, we upgraded our plant
Right.
and we're still paying that off, so that's.
Which is wonderful.
I was just curious.
Yeah, is it state of the art, like we have more of a state of the art situation?
What's long-term?
Are we trying to build up money for some expenditure? Because in the previous slide, it showed the fund balance going up.
That is a very good question. So,
I didn't even know
the
the answer.
fund balances remain, you know, them kind of just inching up over time is more of a function of what is happening with debt in those particular years. But if you've noticed across both funds, the fund balances remain higher than target across all the years. Even though, you know, we're bringing them down to from where we currently are, this has everything to do with the updated credit rating expectations discussed in the spring workshop.
Right.
So all of the fund, and you're gonna see a very similar thing in the general fund. We are taking all the fund balances down over the 10 years as best we can, but also still maintaining a AAA credit rating. So I don't think you're gonna see any of the fund balances reaching what the city has historically defined as their fund targets because of the updated credit rating expectations. Going forward, I wouldn't change anything right this minute, right? Because Moody's, our credit rating agency, just changed this. So I don't know how, you know, what they're gonna do over time. Are they gonna continue to use this for the next several years? Are they gonna have, you know, I would watch this. But at some point, if they stay consistent and we want to continue to be a AAA rated community, which we historically have wanted to, the city may potentially need to start taking a look at changing its fund balance targets.
Would these be accessible under our policy for PFAS, new PFAS regulations? Or if, for example, we don't get the other tranche of loans from the IEPA for the lead service lines, those I think would qualify as sort of unplanned emergency use, even though I know we don't want to spend down too much. If we have these funds, could we use those potentially to offset those unexpected expenses?
I mean, my concern is, without raising any rates, would be that it's not a one-time, right? You're gonna take it down and it's gonna stay down. These are very large, you know, expenditures.
Right.
So I would not, I mean, if you take this fund balance down, you're gonna hit Moody's targets.
Right.
You're gonna hit their negative targets. So.
Okay. Just trying to figure out
Because
where
you'll be
those,
taking out more debt at the same time you're taking the fund balance down, right?
which is a double no-no.
Correct.
Yep, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? Staff again is requesting city council concurrence with these updated rate plans to use in the.
I see yeses around the table. Annette, yes?
Thank you.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, that is really the fee and tax changes that you will see when you eventually get, I didn't bring it up, the budget draft document in just a little while. I'm gonna change topics here and move on to the 10-year CIP and CIP funding. I'll present just a couple of summary slides like I have in the past, and then I will turn things over to Ron so that he can really go through the details. So the city's proposed 2025 capital improvements that are in the budget total $36 million, with $32 million designated for infrastructure. 45% is for water and sewer infrastructure. 44% is for streets, streetscape, parking, bridge, bike walk, sidewalk lighting, striping, and tree upgrades. 7% is for public safety fleet and equipment, public works fleet, and citywide technology upgrades. And then lastly, 4% is for facilities. The capital funding plan is 71% pay-as-you-go and 29% debt financing. There's $10.5 million of new debt proposed in 2025. $5 million is the IEPA 30-year zero interest rate loan that we previously talked about. I know we talked about 10, and this is 5. Well, 5 is planned. $5 million of improvements are planned for 2025. If IEPA structures the loan similar to the last loan that they had, they won't just hand over the entire 10 million, right? As we do the work, they'll give us the funds. And so I'm saying, you know, the assumption here is that, you know, we're gonna do $5 million of work, they will give us $5 million of the $10 million loan that they're extending us. You know, whether they change that, you know, is yet to be seen. So $5 million for the IPA loan, and then $5.5 million for a new GEO bond issue to partially fund street, facility, and sewer improvements. And then this 10.5, that excludes the $4 million that we would include in the GEO bond issue for the library. That would be, you know, although the city has to issue it, you know, that would come out of the library tax levy, as we previously talked about. So the city invested $264 million in capital improvements over the last 15 years through 2024.
That's incredible.
It's huge. It's huge.
It's incredible.
It's huge.
It used to be 10.8 million every year, no matter what they needed, 10.8. Good job.
The city is proposing an additional $214 million of capital improvements over the next 10 years, including the $36 million proposed for 2025. The largest components of investment are for water, sewer, streets, fleet and equipment, and facilities, and over the 10 years, the funding is 21% debt financing and 79% pay as you go. So still a very large percentage pay as you go. And where does that come from? Really user charges, sales and other tax, strategic fund drawdown, motor fuel tax, grants, tax increment financing, and then sale of assets. The city will meet or exceed the fund balance targets in each of the year in each of the funds. And then, as I had previously said, although we are strategically taking fund balance down over the 10-year period, those balances will continue to remain above target given the updated credit rating methodology. So next steps, Ron's going to come up and walk you through the details of the 2025 and 10-year capital. Then on October 10th, we'll issue department budget staff reports to City Council. We'll have the proposed budget available on October 25th, and then to the public, that's to City Council, and then to the public on October 28th.
So on October 10th, you'll be on the beach with a Mai Tai. Missing us dearly.
I'll be on a sailboat. And any questions before I turn things over?
Great.
Thank you so much.
When do we get the draft budget?
It looks like the end of October. Oh, no, that's on the website, so probably September.
I can look it up.
September. Hi there.
All right, I know I have a lot of slides to cover, and I know we're pretty close on time here.
Dinner is nigh, you betcha.
I will do my best here.
Thank you.
So if I could please just start recognizing our exceptional public works team. Truly, Mike Hart, Assistant Director, Ron Executive Director, Don Jensen, Water Plant Superintendent. I'm so very fortunate to work with these individuals every single day since I started the city about 10 years ago myself. So thank you very much for what you guys do. So we're going to talk about how we prioritize our CIP. We're going to go further into streets, but we basically do an assessment of the streets every 5 years. We'll talk more about that. Water main and sewers and underground utilities. There's master plans for each one of those utilities that we reference. We also look at size and material of those pipes for upgrades, and of course also maintenance items like water main breaks. And on our sanitary and storm sewer side, we do regular maintenance and flushing. We have a televising truck, so we can look at those, assess those, and include them in our CIP projects. Facilities, we look for life safety first, you know, making sure the fire alarms work, sprinkler systems work, that kind of thing, but also you have to make sure HVAC, roofs, no leaks, that kind of thing. Our facilities team is only 3.5 to 4 people here, and so with 28 facilities, with average age over 50 years. They cover a lot of ground, so we do a lot of that work contractually. And highlights of the CIP, we talked about the library expansion already, but we're excited about public services in Fire Station 34, potentially a new building. Where we have conceptual design money in 2025 to review that and see how that site looks. Is it going to be possible to do a building? Will it be something that we rehab existing? But look at that. But if we stay on that schedule, 2026 for design and bid award, start the construction, finish up 2027.
So I have a question on that, and don't kill me, but we had talked briefly about the possibility of a fourth station for the Fort Sheridan, Highwood, that area. Is that in
No, it's not on there.
anywhere?
Anywhere.
Okay.
We're still assessing, we had a meeting with the City of Lake Forest, we're still assessing options, we're looking at our response times, so no decisions.
Okay, and I don't know if it's, the chief isn't here, but, you know, fire versus EMT, and if that's an option, or if that's legally not feasible.
We're
Sure,
looking at
that's
all
not the
options.
we want.
Yeah,
You what?
Strike the outside the
Yeah.
border.
Okay.
we're looking at all options. I mean, from a response perspective, having an engine allows you to do EMS service on site until an ambulance can arrive on scene to actually transport. And
Okay.
then you can also respond to their rate of fire. So that's the advantage. But we're looking at all options and then we'll come back.
Fourth station question was posed by the troublemaking mayor. And my question was, you know, fire versus EMT versus both, and is that, so, Keita has spoken. But it's not in this plan, that was my question, I see you, so just wanted to kind of see if that's something, but you said that we're in conversation, so you can see if that's something that the two municipalities need to pursue.
I mean, we do have 17.5 still in the budget for 27 for the station. So, I mean, we will, you know, we certainly want to have all of our assessments done well before there, because we want to make sure that money is well spent at that location. before.
Exactly, okay, Kim?
As long as we're making trouble. The bridge, the bike pad bridge over the highway,
Right.
is that in the,
Oh,
in the
yeah.
budget?
It is. It is. We do have a budget.
For what year?
2026. I have it on slide here coming up. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're excited.
Right.
Okay,
Well,
cause that was,
sorry.
cause how long has Joe Pasquesi been gone?
Right.
Yeah.
We were talking about it with Joe, so.
Yeah, great,
Yeah,
thank you.
and we have ITOP funding for that as well, so we'll take that.
That's good.
And that's money actually to build it, that is in the budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, fleet and equipment, so of course, safe and operable working conditions, we buy multi-purpose types of machines that can do just more than one thing whenever possible. We continue to, procure sustainable options with our equipment. We bought a hybrid loader for the larger equipment. It's not always available, but in this case, the hybrid loader is working out great. We go hybrid gas if we can, or full electric. In the 10-year CIP, we have $3.8 million budgeted over those years. We typically replace 2 inspector vehicles or like admin vehicle cars each year, and we have a 2.5-ton dump truck, which is a large size dump. Some other highlights for 2020, well, we have 24, 25, and beyond. So Park Avenue West Bridge is going to be completed. That says 2025. That's misleading. So that bridge will be open September, October. So we're really close there. You'll see it on the books as they pay, the bills and the product carry into 2025. But the bridge will be open soon. We have the Briargate Business District Streetscape Improvement, which is started 2024 here, and we'll continue a small portion of that project next year. Water tank membranes for Don that we're doing a third of those each year. So this would be 2025 would be year 2 with the full replacement of those membranes by 2026. And then we'll talk about the street resurfacing, but we are setting a goal of PCN, pavement condition number, to 70, so I'll talk more about that. So as far as bridges go, these bridges take years in the process before they start. Beach, Judson, Wade, St. John's, and Dean are all scheduled within our next 10 years. Green Bay Road, we're familiar with that one. Construction is slated for 2028, but you'll see it in the budget each year as design continues for that project. And there's the Route 41 Bridge, 2026. For construction on that one, so we are in design currently with that project. We have a grant that Don Jensen applied and obtained for the intake pipe at our water plant.
900,000, was that what we ended up getting? 900,000, something like that?
That was the community funding project that that was year one, we're in the running for a second one, for the intake project. And also we're in the running for, working through the red tape for an energy efficiency grant, $388,000 from the DOE, IEPA.
Oh, very good. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then, of course, the shared road sidewalk installation, which we've been trying to line up successfully with IDOT for many, many years. Right now, if everything stays on schedule, 2025 is the year. We shall see. So these are just some highlights of the 2025 budget, just a point of clarification. The sanitary sewer upgrade, so you see like 842,000, that's the total cost of those projects that we pulled out of the budget to highlight. So the actual, our sanitary CIP for 25 is about 1.5 million. So these are just a few projects that we pulled. We do our water, our sewer main line each year. So that's a trenchless way to rehabilitate the sewers. So instead of digging them up, if they're size appropriate, we can line them and get another 50 years of life out of the sewers. It's a great program. We do it every year. Manhole inspections is a similar program. Beach Lane has some water main and sewer. And then Sheridan Road, some sanitary work there as well. And you'll see the same thing on the storm sewer. And you'll see the same projects show up. You'll see these projects show up in multiple funds, and that's because there's portions of storm, there's portions of sanitary, water, and so we'll budget across those funds.
Right.
Water distribution improvements, we talked about lead service lines, that's in there. Beach Lane, like we said, it's a little bit of water main on Briargate, and then there's a fairly major water main replacement project on Linden, which is gonna connect to the project that's just starting now on Maple. So as Maple finishes up, we have an undersized piece of main, we're gonna stub that out and get it ready for Linden next year for a long stretch of water main.
Is that impacting access to the school at all? If it's, or how have we coordinated with 112?
I don't know if we've gotten that far with it yet, Bear, but we will
Okay.
absolutely make sure the school has access.
Great, thanks.
Water plant improvements, we talked about the membranes, so those are we're doing a third each year. And we have a large generator replacement. You see the cost there, it's a huge generator to run some of these pumps. There's a high lift VFD motor down at the water plant, which we have a grant for as well for energy efficiency. And then we have money in the budget for the finished water meters, which are the main water meters leaving the plant. And these couple meters are very old. So it's exciting to get some of those done.
Nice picture of Don at the bottom.
Yeah, you see the smiles next to the membranes there.
New membranes, happy man.
So for next year, 2.5 ton dump, like I said, and we're looking to purchase 4 hopefully fully electric vehicles. We've had some trouble procuring the same vehicle over and over as these vehicles come on and off the market. The Chevy Bolt is supposed to be coming back, so we're hopeful we can buy 4 Chevy Bolts. But it has been difficult to procure vehicles and equipment. It's been tough. Let's see, facilities. So we have some tuck pointing here at City Hall. We have HVAC upgrades at the police department and the fire training tower, which of course is subject to extreme conditions at all times. Ends up needing tuck points every so often to keep it functioning. In our forestry capital, we have our tree planting program. We do about $100,000 each year, and there's $100,000 into upgrade the landscaping and the additional planters that, like we did for just a couple of them this year.
Is this the time where we say, sure, go with something other than the leaf, linden, whatever question? Diversify your forest in the CBD?
That was another presentation.
I know, no, I'm just wondering.
But I'll be back.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the McClory Trail Pollinator Garden looks really great. I was just there last week.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really grown in.
And we've been doing portions every year. We
Right.
budgeted them out, we just keep on moving along. So it's-
Every year I get an email. Do you know what they're doing? Yes, yes we do. We're paying for it, we're fine.
As we talk about all these capital projects and we talk about the grants, this is over a 10-year period, over $48 million in grants.
Well done, that's great.
It's such a huge, it makes such a huge impact, and if we had to imagine, funding all of these projects locally, it wouldn't be doable. So it's
That's great.
So as far as communication goes on all of our projects, we send out notification letters of things coming up. We do open houses both in person and also via Zoom. We do like hybrid, which is required on a lot of the IDOT projects. They require that format. And then of course we have our website that keeps we keep up to date with our construction projects. Once the project starts, we residents in those areas get a start construction letter. We use our message boards. We have our new HP infrastructure signs that go out with an envelope that's got that stamp on it. So hopefully people can recognize it as an infrastructure project and not just junk mail or something. We use door tags, we have, frequent updates on social media and email blasts, and of course, like I said, the website stays up to date. This is just a screenshot of the website for our CBD resurfacing project. Talking trees, so I know Joe will get in depth on trees next meeting here, but this is our tree canopy as done with LiDAR data. So it's just one map. It's not easy to figure out where everything's at, but in this slide here, what they did is from this LiDAR data from 2017, I asked the GIS people, why is it from 17? They said that's when the last publicly available LiDAR data was available for this area. And so you can look at the square footage of our open space and also of what the tree canopy coverage is. And we did include a comparison to our neighbors there. And we have ourselves on there twice with 41 removed, which is not our area, but has a significant amount of right of way.
That's what you're saying.
So we're sitting, over 50% coverage in our right of ways. And it also doesn't take into account like golf courses. There's
Right,
a lot
I
of
noticed
things.
in your map, that's like a lot of.
Yeah, so it's tough to dial this in, but this was a nice feature with the LiDAR data.
That's right.
So I'm gonna go into the capital aspect of the street rehabilitation program and how we do streets.
Okay, just for sake of timing,
Yeah.
what's your sense of how much longer you have versus us coming back after?
I can skip something.
I
I guess
just want
what's
people to be able to eat dinner and not vomit in the process. 'Cause it's like, the 15 minutes is kind of short.
Maybe just go through high-level overview just of what's here, and then I'll send the PowerPoint to everybody, and then if you wanna talk further about it, we can do so one-on-one.
Do you have any policy questions, any approvals that you need from this group?
I would say that, we go through our testing each year on the streets, or every 5 years, we develop our PCN numbers, our pavement condition number. And our goal is to be at good or better, from 70 or above. Currently, right now, only 74% of our current streets are at 70 or above. Typically, we've budgeted about $2 million each year for the last several years, give or take.
Okay.
What we're proposing is a revised budget of $5 million to make an impact to get ourselves to that goal of 70 or better across the city. And that includes concrete streets, which are their own unique, but they're unique, they're great when they go in, they're hard to maintain as they age.
Yeah.
And people are not generally happy with the patching that we do. We can't get rid of patching, but they would like to see it resurfaced. This is just showing the importance of catching these streets before they go off that cliff as the base deteriorates. So I guess if there's any takeaway, I would just say that when in public works, the surface obviously is important. That's what everybody sees. That's what the bicyclists use, potholes, etc. But when we look at it, we have to look at the base because it makes a difference on how we approach the program. This is our typical resurface program here at the streets that we plan on doing next year based upon our estimates, which are tentative because we have to get bid pricing back and everything else. We have our SMART program, which is streets that have bad services but good bases. We can use those. The SMART is a great application. We can spend our money in those situations. There's our SMART streets. Concrete pavement. We have our patching program. This is our patching. And then our composite streets, which is basically an asphalt overlay over the concrete. So you have the concrete street, it's extremely hard, and even if the surface deteriorates, you have to do a little bit of patching, but you have a great base underneath there. So we've had good luck in resurfacing over the top of these, and that's what we could propose to do on these concrete streets here.
Great.
So, and that all goes under the guide of making sure we don't have to do water main or sewer or any kind of underground infrastructure. So, and this is just a picture of a patched concrete street, and this is a concrete street with an overlay of asphalt, which looks like a beautiful new street.
Yeah.
And so, just very quickly, so we've done a lot of things in our CBD. We have our dedicated maintenance crews. We have our tree trimming, and which Joe will get into next meeting more depth. Our trees, we have our holiday lights, which are basically been full-time holiday lights here.
Thanks for the upgraded gardening. I think people are noticing that it looks.
Yeah, I have some, we have our new furniture that we've done
That's great.
down there. We have here's a picture of it in May, here's a picture in July. Here's the one at the War Memorial, and so this will be the template that we use for the existing. We're gonna do all the rest of them next year, 16 different planting locations.
That's awesome.
And so then here's our resurfacing downtown, here's our XD crosswalks, which look
Amazing.
awesome.
Yeah.
They really do set the whole tone, I feel like, and here's pedestrian upgrades, which are still coming. Signals and lighting equipment has been difficult to procure. We order as soon as we get the approval from council, and they just sit. So if those are coming, and those will be available soon. We did Second Street. And so this was just a highlight of the dollars. These are round numbers, and some of these projects have not finished yet. But generally speaking, there's been a major investment by this council, by the city, in our CBD and over $11 million just in 2024 between amenities, equipment like the cleaners and sweepers, and of course all the work that's taking place.
Fantastic. Thank you. Kim and then Annette.
Two super quick things. I think you've demonstrated your ability to increase the budget because everything's happened so efficiently, so thank you for
Absolutely.
that. The vehicles, hybrids, I understand for some of the larger vehicles where there may not be an electric model available, but I think we're at the point, both in terms of it's 100 degrees outside here, climate change, and we're at the point in terms of the cost and availability of other vehicles that we should be going all electric. The maintenance and the fuel costs more than justified at this point, and there's some direct pay options for governments to get some of those rebate dollars back.
Understood. Yeah, our last van was that electric, and then they canceled it. So then we had to buy another electric van, so we did find a second van to purchase that's full electric. So that's definitely our intention.
I saw one today.
An electric van.
Yeah, it's at Highland Park.
Oh,
City of
yeah.
Highland Park.
Yeah, we have some that we had previous, yeah.
Yeah.
And then just really quick, it's a great picture that Miller took that Annette doctored up. So with the train coming across, that railing there that is there, we're waiting for the resurfacing to be completed. Once that railing will be changed this year. Joe's working on it as we speak. So.
Thank you. Well done.
Can I ask my comment?
Yes.
I just a quick comment. It's amazing what you guys did this weekend, that you got this stuff done in time.
Right.
And we all are so grateful. And you really did show what you can do, so thank you.
Thank you.
From all of us.
So we'll do closed after the council meeting, so we just need a motion to adjourn the committee of the whole.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Well done. That's great. Thank you.